Howdy YouTubers, this is the Roaming Prepper. This is your Saturday SITREP for 17th of April 2021. And as you can tell by my picture, it has to do with geopolitics. If you guys recall, those of you who followed me for a bit, a couple of months back, I pointed out pay attention to geopolitics. At the time, China, Russia, there were a lot of things moving around. But this conversation will probably aim more toward Europe. I would highly advise before I go forward, if you have not seen some of New York Angry roaming, I'm sorry, New York Angry or a few of the other preppers, some of the stuff they're posting, especially New York prepper. He's had some really good information from public space, something we need to talk about. I'm also going to be doing on a separate video a book review, my Tuesday book club, with the book called 2017 War with Russia. It's written by General Sir Richard Sheriff, who was the Deputy Supreme Commander of all NATO forces in Europe. And a very knowledgeable guy, both of the geopolitics as well as the military implications. And he runs a scenario in that book that is very applicable to today. But with no further ado, I'm going to try and keep this straightforward. I'm going to close this window out and let's start talking about. So as you all know, the Ukraine is under a lot of pressure from Russia. Russia, and I'm not seeing this on US news, I'm seeing it more in the international scene, the Al Jazeera, the BBC. I was looking earlier at Reuters and another one, actually RT, the Russian news, and they're all got spins on this, but this is a big deal in Europe, and I think here in the States we're kind of being a little tone deaf to what's going on, and it would be unfortunate because it can get ugly very quickly, and it's not going to be a war that's going to be far away. This is the kind of war countries like Russia and China can bring that home very quickly. Even if they don't go nuclear, there are conventional weapons that they can use to give us a black eye. So right now here you see Russia to close parts of Black Sea near Crimea for 6 months. They're basically blocking ships in a generally public or international water. Another person's pointing out that Kiev's ambassador to Germany had mentioned that if they can't be part of NATO, they will try to get nukes themselves. Keep in mind, Ukraine is pretty decently funded and they do have great scientists. They're more than capable of getting nukes on their own. That could be hairy, but they're in a corner right now. And of course, Russia and Ukraine are expelling each other's diplomats. We've already kicked some out. The Russians have kicked some out. Everyone's kicking out diplomats. What I will qualify this one is a lot of the people being kicked out are what they call the station chief type people, the CIA guy or the Mossad guy or the RGB, which is really a KGB, modern KGB. They're kicking out the intelligence officers and anyone they think affiliated with that. This is largely symbolic, but that's a concern. And of course, while that's going on there, Iran has identified who it thinks is a threat or the person who created the attack on the nuclear site. As you're all aware, the US pulled out of the Iran nuke deal because they felt they weren't doing what they were supposed to anyway. Now everyone with the new administration, they're trying to go back into this nuclear deal. Israel is not super keen about it and instead has decided to screw with the Iranians, which they've done for years with each other. So how do all these parts come together? So let me sum this up real quick for you. Here is the world. Now down here is you have Iran and you have Israel over here, and of course Syria is in chaos. Iraq is just now starting to stabilize, but we're going to focus up here for now. So notice Russia reaches rather all of these areas. Now, Russia's already made the mistake of going into Afghanistan. I don't think they'll do that anytime soon. But this area is what concerns me. So, right now, here's the Ukraine. Across this entire area, there have been Russian separatists or Russian nationalists trying to carve out a chunk of Ukraine for a pro-Russian country. So if you look back a bit, so here are the Balkan states: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. This little thing right here is actually part of Russia. People don't realize that. Mind you, it borders Poland and Lithuania. Now, Belarus, Minsk is very friendly with Moscow. That's not an issue. The concern is actually right in this area. As they continue to fight back and forth, there is fear that Russia will do what it did in Crimea. What the Russians did, they said these are ethnic Russians. They're not being treated well. They came up with some charges and basically went across this bridge. There's a bridge here going across the city of Kerch. They just sent an armored column in there, plus some helicopters, and took it over. Now, why is that so important? Well, Sevastopol is a Cold War military base, and it has massive docks all across here. These are known as extensive deep water ship type docks. Russia wanted more docks, and lo and behold, they just took them. Now, the concern is, let's go back to the geopolitical map. So Ukraine is not part of NATO, as I just mentioned. However, if Russia starts coming in here, there are a few risks. Romania is a probationary member of NATO, as are these three Baltic states. Poland is not formally yet. I believe they're working on it, but Russia's not a fan of all this. The bottom line is, it's not unheard of for Russia to attack multiple targets, historically speaking, and let the defenders decide who they want to defend. Recently, a New York prepper pointed this out, reconnaissance aircraft from the US and NATO have been flying circles around the Black Sea. They did a lot of little zigzags around Georgia. There are concerns that Russia would like to take some of the docks here, as well as a chunk of the Ukraine, and possibly annex Mariupol, some of these dock areas here, to increase their exposure to the ocean. Their proximity to Romania and Turkey, who are NATO members, especially Turkey is a long-standing NATO member, is not going to sit well. The big fear is these two are going to get in a conflagration that could inadvertently result in other countries getting sucked in. And if treaty countries get sucked in, it can go sideways very quickly. This is really important to watch. This kind of situation could disrupt trade. It will disrupt gas lines. Right now, Russian and Ukrainian gas is going into Europe. That could easily be attacked or shut off. That will cause a lot of issues here in Europe, kind of put the Europeans on their heels. If there's combat here, Turkey's already shot down a couple of Russian planes for violating their airspace, flying into Syria. Keep in mind, Russia has put a large airfield and military presence in the Aleppo area. It would not be unexpected that they could try to utilize these assets here in a war with the Ukraine, and that could impede on Turkish or Bulgarian or Romanian airspace. That's what a web we have in this part of the world. So guys, pay attention to this kind of stuff, because if this goes hot, aircraft flights in the whole of this part of Europe are going to be stopped, because there are going to be missiles and fighter planes everywhere. The proximity to NATO forces in the Black Sea, Romanian, Turkish, and American and French, uh, could risk sucking one of the bigger countries into a war. Now, I don't think it's what Russia wants. I think they want to do a land grab, but it would not be unheard of that they go grab a piece of Ukraine and while they're at it, try and take a chunk of Estonia or Latvia. These are NATO affiliated countries now. I think they're probationary. That could get ugly very quickly. So pay attention to this. I recommend making sure your foods are topped off, your meds are topped off, but just something to pay attention to. Watch this stuff. It can get dangerous very quickly, and if there's suddenly shipping embargoes or shipping gets shut down, aircraft get shut down, there are going to be shortages. We're still struggling with COVID, so pay attention to what's going on. Godspeed if you're traveling, and I will see you next week. Take care, guys.